Chapter 1. The Perfect Family. Ryan Walker stood in the driveway of his suburban home, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. It was a bright Saturday morning, the kind of day that made him appreciate the life he had built. His house, a spacious two-story with a neatly manicured lawn, was a testament to years of hard work and dedication. As a mechanical engineer, Ryan had always prided himself on his ability to fix things, and his home was no exception. Inside, the sound of laughter filled the air. Sophie, his 16-year-old daughter, was in the kitchen, attempting to teach her 14-year-old brother Jake how to make pancakes. The smell of batter and sizzling bacon wafted through the house, mingling with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. "Careful, Jake. You're going to burn them if you keep the heat that high," Sophie instructed, her voice a blend of authority and sisterly teasing. Jake rolled his eyes, but adjusted the stove's temperature, muttering something about Sophie always being right. Their banter was a familiar and comforting backdrop for Ryan. He cherished these moments, the simple joys of family life. Laura, his wife of 17 years, entered the kitchen, a warm smile on her face. She was dressed casually, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Laura was an accountant, meticulous and organized, qualities that balanced Ryan's sometimes spontaneous nature. They made a good team, complementing each other in ways that had sustained their marriage through various ups and downs. "Morning, everyone," Laura greeted, kissing Sophie on the forehead and ruffling Jake's hair. She poured herself a cup of coffee and joined Ryan at the table. "Morning, honey," Ryan replied, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "What's the plan for today?" "I thought we could all head to the park later," Laura suggested. "Maybe have a picnic and play some games. It's been a while since we had a family day out." "Sounds perfect," Ryan agreed, glancing at Sophie and Jake, who nodded enthusiastically. After breakfast, they all piled into the family car, heading to the local park. The park was bustling with activity children playing on the swings, families picnicking on the grass, and couples walking hand in hand. They found a shady spot under a large oak tree and spread out their blanket. Ryan and Jake tossed a football back and forth, while Sophie and Laura unpacked the picnic basket. As they settled down to eat, the conversation flowed easily. They talked about school, upcoming events, and plans for the summer. "Dad, can we go to the car show next weekend?" Sophie asked, her eyes lighting up. She shared Ryan's passion for cars, a bond that had brought them even closer over the years. "Absolutely," Ryan replied with a grin. "Maybe we can work on the old Chevy in the garage afterward." "Count me out," Jake interjected, shaking his head. "I'll stick to my books, thank you very much." "You are missing out, little brother," Sophie teased, but there was no malice in her words. She adored Jake, even if they had different interests. As the day went on, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was slightly off. Laura seemed distracted, her laughter a bit too forced, her smiles not quite reaching her eyes. He decided to address it later, not wanting to spoil the day. That evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Ryan and Laura sat on the back porch, enjoying the cool night air. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "You've been quiet today," he observed gently. "Is everything okay?" Laura sighed, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I am fine, really. Just a lot on my mind with work and everything." Ryan didn't push. He knew Laura well enough to recognize when she needed space. "If you ever want to talk, I am here," he said softly, kissing the top of her head. "Thanks, Ryan," she murmured. "I appreciate it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the stars twinkling above them. Ryan couldn't help but feel grateful for the life they had. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and he wouldn't trade it for anything. As they headed inside, Ryan glanced at the family photos lining the hallway walls. Each picture told a story: birthday parties, vacations, holidays spent together. He smiled, confident that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. But as Ryan drifted off to sleep that night, he couldn't shake the unease that had settled in his gut. Something was changing, and he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Little did he know, their seemingly perfect life was about to be turned upside down in ways he could never have imagined. Chapter 2. The Unthinkable Revelation. The following week passed in a blur of routine activities. Ryan threw himself into his work at the engineering firm, tackling projects with his usual enthusiasm. Evenings were spent helping Sophie with her math homework and discussing Jake's latest interests in literature and civics. Laura remained busy with her job at the accounting firm, often coming home late, her mind seemingly preoccupied. Friday arrived, and Ryan was looking forward to a relaxing weekend. He had planned to take Sophie to the car show and maybe get started on restoring the old Chevy. As he pulled into the driveway that evening, he noticed Laura's car already parked in the garage. Odd, he thought. Laura usually arrived home after him. Inside, the house was unusually quiet. Sophie and Jake were nowhere to be seen, and the usual smells of dinner cooking were absent. He headed upstairs, calling out for Laura. "I am in here," her voice came from their bedroom. Ryan pushed open the door and froze. Laid out on the bed was a little black dress, high heels, and an assortment of lingerie. Laura was in the bathroom, meticulously applying makeup. "What's all this?" he asked, trying to keep his tone light. "Are we going out tonight?" Laura turned to face him, her expression a mixture of determination and anxiety. "No, Ryan. I'm going out." A cold wave of dread washed over him. "Going out? Where? With whom?" She took a deep breath. "I have a date tonight, with Eric Thompson." The name sent a jolt through Ryan. Eric Thompson was 10 years younger, a charismatic man who had been flirting with Laura for months. Ryan's mind raced, trying to process the information. "What do you mean, a date?" "You are married, Laura." "This isn't right," he said, his voice shaking. "I need this, Ryan," she replied, her voice steady but soft. "I need to feel attractive, to know that I am still desirable to someone else. It's just one night. I promise it won't happen again." Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. "If you walk out that door tonight, Laura, we are done. You know that, right? This isn't something we can just move past." Laura's eyes filled with tears, but she remained resolute. "I'm sorry, Ryan, I really am, but I have to do this." Ryan stood there feeling as if the ground had been pulled out from under him. The woman he had loved and trusted for nearly 2 decades was about to throw it all away for one night with another man. He wanted to shout, to beg, to make her see reason, but he knew it was futile. "Where are the kids?" he asked finally, his voice hollow. "They're spending the night at friends' houses," Laura replied. "I thought it would be best if they weren't here for this." Ryan nodded numbly. "Do what you have to do, Laura. But understand that if you walk out that door, our marriage is over." Laura finished her makeup and walked past him, her perfume lingering in the air. "I'll be back in the morning," she said softly. Ryan watched as she walked out the door, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss battled for dominance. He stood there for a long time, staring at the empty doorway, unable to move. Eventually, he forced himself into action. He went to the guest bedroom and began moving his clothes and personal items. This would be his new bedroom until he could find a more permanent solution. He couldn't bear to stay in the room he had shared with Laura. As he packed, he couldn't help but think about the years they had spent together. The good times, the bad times, the ordinary moments that made up a life. He had thought they were happy, that their love was strong enough to withstand anything. But tonight had shattered that illusion. After moving his things, Ryan went to his home office. He needed to secure their finances before Laura could do any damage. He transferred half of their joint checking and savings into his own account, paid off and canceled their credit cards, and applied for new ones in his name. He also planned to change his direct deposit and split their investments first thing Monday morning. With the practical matters taken care of, Ryan poured himself a drink and sat in the darkened living room, trying to make sense of it all. He knew he had to keep it together for Sophie and Jake. They would need him now more than ever. As the hours passed, Ryan's emotions ebbed and flowed. Anger at Laura for her betrayal, sadness for the loss of their marriage, and fear for what the future held. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he was determined to face it head on. Eventually, exhaustion overtook him, and he fell into a fitful sleep on the couch. In the early hours of the morning, he was jolted awake by the sound of the front door opening. Laura stepped inside, looking as if nothing had happened. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "I am home." Ryan stared at her, unable to comprehend her nonchalance. "Get a full STD test and show me a notarized clean report before you touch me again," he said coldly. "And Don T expect me to stay in the same room with you." Laura S. smile faltered. "Ryan, it was just one night. We can move past this." "No, Laura," he replied, his voice firm. "You broke our vows, and with that, you broke us." Her eyes filled with tears, but Ryan felt nothing but a hollow emptiness. "We'll talk later," she said quietly, retreating to her bedroom. Ryan remained in the living room, staring into the distance. He knew the days ahead would be some of the hardest he had ever faced, but he was determined to rebuild his life. Laura S.'s actions had changed everything, but he still had his children, his career, and his own sense of integrity to hold on to. Chapter 3: Confrontation and Ultimatum. Ryan woke the next morning with a pounding headache, the events of the previous night replaying in his mind like a nightmare he couldn't escape. He rubbed his eyes and glanced at the clock. It was barely dawn, but he knew there was no point in trying to go back to sleep. He needed to confront Laura and make it clear that things would never be the same. He found her in the kitchen, sipping a cup of coffee as if it were any other morning. The sight of her, so casual and untroubled, ignited a spark of anger in Ryan S.'s chest. "Morning," she said, her voice too bright and cheerful. Ryan didn't respond. Instead, he poured himself a cup of coffee and sat across from her at the table. For a moment, they sipped their drinks in silence, the tension between them palpable. Finally, Ryan set his cup down and looked Laura in the eye. "We need to talk." She sighed, as if she had been expecting this. "Ryan, I know you're upset, but it was just one night. I needed to feel—" "No," Ryan interrupted, his voice cold. "You don't get to justify this. You walked out on our marriage last night. You betrayed me and you betrayed our family." Laura S.'s eyes flashed with anger. "I told you I needed this, Ryan. You should understand. It was just to boost my ego. It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" Ryan echoed, incredulous. "You slept with another man, Laura. You broke our vows. That means everything." She set her cup down with a loud clink. "I came back, didn't I? I'm here, ready to move on. Why can't you?" "Because you destroyed my trust," Ryan replied, his voice shaking. "You think I can just forget what you did? You think we can go back to the way things were?" "Yes," Laura said firmly. "I think we can. If you just let go of your pride and work with me, we can get through this." Ryan stared at her, barely able to believe what he was hearing. "My pride? This isn't about pride, Laura. This is about betrayal. You made a choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." Laura S.'s expression hardened. "And what consequences are those? You think you're going to divorce me and take the kids? You know how the courts work, Ryan. I'll get the house, the kids, everything. You'll be left with nothing." The threat hung in the air between them, but Ryan refused to back down. "I don't care about the house or the money. I care about our kids, and I care about my self-respect. I'm not staying in a marriage where I am disrespected and betrayed." Laura stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Fine, Ryan. If that's how you want it, we'll see how things play out. But don't think for a second that I am going to make this easy for you." With that, she stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Ryan alone with his thoughts. He knew he had to prepare for the worst. Laura was right about one thing: the divorce wouldn't favor him, but he was determined to fight for his children and his dignity. Later that day, Ryan sat in his home office, going over their financial documents. He had already transferred half of their joint accounts into his own name, but there was more to be done. He needed to secure his assets and protect himself from any moves Laura might make. As he worked, Sophie knocked on the door and peeked her head in. "Dad, can I talk to you?" Ryan looked up, forcing a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Come in." Sophie entered, her expression worried. "What is going on between you and Mom? You were both so tense this morning." Ryan sighed, knowing he couldn't hide the truth from his daughter. Your mom and I are having some serious issues, Sophie. She did something that hurt me deeply, and I'm not sure if we can fix it. Sophie's eyes widened. Did she cheat on you? Ryan nodded, feeling a pang of pain at having to confirm it. Yes, she did. Sophie sat down, her face a mixture of shock and anger. How could she do that? After everything you've done for us? I don't know, Sophie, Ryan said softly. But I need you to know that no matter what happens, I love you and Jake more than anything. I'm going to fight for us, for our family. Sophie nodded, tears filling her eyes. I love you too, Dad. And I am here for you, whatever you need. Ryan reached out and hugged her, feeling a surge of gratitude for his daughter's support. Thank you, Sophie. That means a lot to me. As the day went on, Ryan prepared himself for the inevitable confrontation with Laura. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to stand his ground. He had spent too many years building a life and a family to let it all fall apart without a fight. When evening came, Laura returned from work, her demeanor as frosty as it had been that morning. Ryan was in the living room waiting for her. We need to discuss the logistics, he said as she walked in. Laura raised an eyebrow. Logistics? Living arrangements? Finances? The kids? Ryan clarified. If we were heading for a divorce, we need to figure these things out. Laura crossed her arms, leaning against the doorway. Fine, let's get this over with. Ryan took a deep breath, steadying himself. First, the house. I know you'll want to keep it, and that's fine, but I want to make sure I have a place to stay where I can see the kids regularly. Laura nodded curtly. Agreed. You can have the guest bedroom for now, but done to think for a second this means I'll go easy on you in court. I don't expect you to, Ryan replied evenly. Next, the finances. I've already transferred half of our joint accounts into my own name. We'll need to split the rest fairly. Laura's eyes narrowed. You already moved the money? Yes, Ryan said. I needed to protect myself. You made it clear you wouldn't make this easy. Laura glared at him but didn't argue. Fine. What about the kids? Ryan's heart ached at the thought of being separated from Sophie and Jake. I want shared custody. I need to be a part of their lives and they need their father. Laura sighed, her anger seeming to soften slightly. We'll see what the court says, but I want to keep them from you, Ryan. I know how much they mean to you. Ryan nodded, relieved to hear at least that much. Thank you. The conversation continued, tense and uncomfortable, but necessary. By the time they had hashed out the basics, it was clear that their marriage was beyond saving. The love and trust they had once shared were gone, replaced by bitterness and resentment. That night, as Ryan lay in the guest bedroom, he couldn't help but reflect on how quickly everything had changed. Just a few days ago, he had believed in the strength of their family, in the love he and Laura had built. Now that belief was shattered, and he was left to pick up the pieces. But despite the pain, Ryan felt a flicker of determination. He would rebuild his life, for himself and for his children. He would fight for what mattered, and he would not let Laura's betrayal define his future. As he drifted off to sleep, he resolved to face whatever challenges lay ahead with strength and resilience. The road would be long and difficult, but he was ready to take the first step. Chapter 4. The morning after the next morning, Ryan woke early, still feeling the emotional weight of the previous day's confrontations. He decided to keep himself busy, hoping that physical activity might help clear his mind. He changed into jeans and a t-shirt, then headed downstairs to make breakfast. As he was preparing an omelet, Sophie wandered into the kitchen, her eyes still puffy from sleep. "Morning, Dad," she said, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, Sophie. Want an omelet?" Ryan asked, trying to keep his tone light. "Sure, thanks," she replied, sitting down at the table. Ryan busied himself with cooking, glancing occasionally at his daughter. He could tell she was worried, and he wanted to reassure her, but he didn't know how much he could say without making things worse. "Where's Mom?" Sophie asked, breaking the silence. "She's still asleep," Ryan replied, keeping his focus on the stove. "She got in late last night." Sophie nodded, but Ryan could see the concern in her eyes. He finished making her omelet and set it in front of her, then started on his own. A few minutes later, Jake joined them, his hair a mess from sleep. "Hey, Dad, can I have one too?" "Of course, buddy," Ryan said, smiling at his son. As they ate breakfast together, Ryan couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. This was supposed to be their normal Saturday morning routine, but now everything felt different. The tension between him and Laura was palpable, and he knew the kids could sense it too. After breakfast, Ryan decided to tackle some yard work. He hoped the physical exertion would help him clear his mind. Sophie and Jake offered to help, eager to distract themselves from the growing tension in the house. They spent the morning raking leaves, trimming bushes, and mowing the lawn. Ryan found some solace in the manual labor, enjoying the simple satisfaction of a well-tended yard. Sophie and Jake chatted and laughed, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy despite the underlying tension. Around noon, Laura emerged from the house looking fresh and put together. She watched them for a moment before approaching Ryan. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice calm but serious. Ryan nodded, setting down the rake. "Kids, why don't you take a break? We'll finish up later." Sophie and Jake exchanged worried glances but complied, heading inside to watch TV. Ryan followed Laura to the back porch, where they sat down on the steps. "I want to apologize for what I said yesterday," Laura began. "I was angry and hurt, and I lashed out. That wasn't fair to you." Ryan appreciated her acknowledgement, but it didn't change the reality of what had happened. "I understand, Laura, but we still need to figure out how to move forward." Laura nodded, looking down at her hands. "I know. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I realize I made a huge mistake. I was selfish and careless, and I hurt you deeply." Ryan took a deep breath, trying to keep his emotions in check. "I'm glad you understand that, but it doesn't erase what you did. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it is broken, it's incredibly hard to rebuild." "I know," Laura said softly, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I love you, Ryan, and I want to make this right." Ryan felt a flicker of hope, but he knew it wouldn't be that simple. "It's going to take time, Laura, a lot of time, and even then I can promise that things will ever be the same." Laura nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. I just want you to know that I am committed to fixing this, no matter what it takes." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of their conversation hanging heavily in the air. Ryan wanted to believe that they could work things out, but the hurt and betrayal still felt too raw. "I appreciate your willingness to try," Ryan said finally, "but we need to take things one step at a time. For now, let us focus on being good co-parents to Sophie and Jake. They need stability and support more than anything else." Laura wiped away her tears and nodded. "Agreed. They deserve our best, especially now." The rest of the day passed uneventfully. Ryan and Laura maintained a careful civility around each other, focusing their energy on their children. Sophie and Jake seemed to relax a bit, sensing the tentative truce between their parents. That evening, Ryan decided to take Sophie to the car show as planned. He needed to get out of the house and clear his mind, and he knew Sophie was looking forward to it. As they drove to the event, they chatted about cars, school, and upcoming plans. At the car show, Ryan was in his element. He and Sophie admired the classic and custom cars, discussing their favorite models and modifications. For a few hours, he was able to forget about the turmoil at home and enjoy the simple pleasure of spending time with his daughter. "Look at that one, Dad!" Sophie exclaimed, pointing to a sleek, restored 1967 Ford Mustang. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Ryan replied, grinning. "I always wanted one of those when I was your age. Maybe we can work on getting one someday," Sophie suggested, her eyes bright with excitement. Ryan smiled, feeling a surge of hope. "Maybe we will, Sophie. Maybe we will." They stayed at the car show until dusk, savoring the sights and sounds. On the drive home, Sophie seemed more relaxed and happy, and Ryan felt a renewed sense of determination. No matter what happened with Laura, he was going to make sure his kids had a stable and loving home. When they returned, Laura was in the living room, reading a book. She looked up as they entered, offering a tentative smile. "Did you have a good time?" "Yeah, it was great," Sophie replied, her enthusiasm genuine. "We saw so many cool cars." "Glad to hear it," Laura said softly. Ryan and Sophie exchanged a glance before heading upstairs. Ryan felt a mix of emotions, hope, uncertainty, and a lingering sadness for what had been lost. But he was determined to keep moving forward, one day at a time. As he lay in bed that night, Ryan reflected on the day's events. The conversation with Laura, the car show with Sophie, and the tentative steps toward rebuilding his life. He knew the road ahead would be long and challenging, but he was ready to face it with strength and resilience. Tomorrow was a new day, and with it came new possibilities. Ryan closed his eyes, determined to make the best of whatever came next. Chapter 5. The Fallout. Sunday morning dawned with a sense of uneasy calm in the Walker household. Ryan woke early as usual, but found himself lying in bed staring at the ceiling. The conversation with Laura the day before had left him with a lot to think about. He knew they had a long road ahead if they were to rebuild any semblance of trust, but he was also acutely aware of the reality things might never be the same. He decided to make breakfast again, hoping to create some semblance of normalcy for Sophie and Jake. As he moved around the kitchen, he could hear the faint sounds of Laura moving about upstairs. The tension was still there, hanging heavy in the air, but they were managing to coexist, if nothing else. Sophie and Jake came downstairs, their faces showing a mix of sleepiness and lingering concern. Ryan smiled at them, trying to project confidence and reassurance. "Good morning, kids. How about some pancakes today?" he offered, his tone cheerful. "Sounds great, Dad," Jake replied, a smile spreading across his face. "Yeah, I love your pancakes," Sophie added, though her eyes betrayed a hint of worry. Ryan set to work, flipping pancakes and chatting with them about their plans for the day. They talked about school, upcoming assignments, and their friends. Ryan made a mental note of everything they mentioned, wanting to stay as involved in their lives as possible. Laura joined them halfway through breakfast, her expression guarded but calm. "Morning, everyone," she said, taking a seat at the table. "Morning," Ryan replied, keeping his tone neutral. Sophie and Jake echoed the greeting, and for a moment, it almost felt like a normal family breakfast. After they finished eating, Ryan decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. "Kids, your mom and I need to talk to you about something important," he began, glancing at Laura for support. Sophie and Jake looked at each other, then back at their parents. "What is it, Dad?" Sophie asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. Ryan took a deep breath. "Your mom and I are going through a rough patch right now. We have decided to separate for a while to figure things out. It doesn't mean we don't love you or each other, but we need some time to work on our issues." Jake's face fell, and Sophie looked stricken. "Are you getting a divorce?" Jake asked, his voice small. "We don't know yet," Laura interjected gently. "We are trying to work things out, but we need to take it one step at a time. No matter what happens, we both love you very much, and we'll always be here for you." Sophie swallowed hard, tears welling up in her eyes. "Why can't you just fix it? Why do you have to separate?" Ryan felt a lump in his throat but forced himself to stay composed. Sometimes, even when people love each other, they need some space to understand what has gone wrong and how to fix it. This is hard for all of us, but we are doing our best to make sure everything turns out okay. Jake looked down at his plate, his shoulders slumped. "I don't want you to separate," he muttered. Laura reached out to touch his hand. "We know, sweetie. Neither do we, but we believe this is the best way to make things better in the long run." The rest of the day was somber. Sophie and Jake retreated to their rooms, processing the news in their own ways. Ryan and Laura maintained a polite distance, each trying to navigate the emotional minefield they had created. In the afternoon, Ryan decided to take a walk to clear his head. He wandered through their neighborhood, his thoughts a jumbled mess of regret, anger, and determination. As he walked, he spotted his neighbor George tending to his garden. "Hey, Ryan," George called out, wiping his hands on his jeans. "How's it going?" Ryan forced a smile. "Hey, George, just needed to clear my head a bit." George nodded, his expression sympathetic. "I hear you. Everything okay at home?" Ryan hesitated, then sighed. Not really. Laura and I are going through a rough patch. We are separating for a while to figure things out. George's face softened. I'm sorry to hear that, man. If you ever need to talk or anything, you know where to find me. Thanks, George. I appreciate it, Ryan replied, feeling a small measure of comfort in his friend's offer. As he continued his walk, Ryan reflected on how much his life had changed in such a short time. He knew he needed to stay strong, not just for himself, but for Sophie and Jake. They deserved stability and love, no matter what happened between him and Laura. When he returned home, the sun was starting to set. He found Sophie in the living room staring blankly at the TV. He sat down next to her, putting an arm around her shoulders. How are you holding up, Soph? He asked gently. She leaned into him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I don't understand why this is happening. I thought we were a happy family. Ryan's heart ached at her words. We are a happy family, Sophie, but sometimes even happy families go through tough times. Your mom and I are trying to figure things out, and we both love you very much. That will never change. Sophie nodded, wiping her eyes. I just want things to go back to normal. I know, Ryan said softly. Me too. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken emotions. They ate in relative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Ryan tried to keep the conversation light, asking the kids about their day and their plans for the week. After dinner, Ryan retreated to his new room, needing some time to himself. He sat at his desk, staring at the papers and files spread out before him. The reality of their situation was sinking in, and he knew he needed to prepare for the difficult journey ahead. He called his lawyer the next morning, setting up an appointment to discuss the separation and potential divorce. He wanted to be as prepared as possible, knowing that Laura's threat of a contentious battle was not an idle one. As the days turned into weeks, Ryan and Laura settled into an uneasy routine. They continued to live under the same roof, but their interactions were limited and strained. Sophie and Jake tried to adapt, though the emotional toll was evident in their behavior. Ryan focused on his work, pouring himself into his projects as a way to cope with the turmoil at home. He also made sure to spend quality time with Sophie and Jake, taking them out on weekends and helping them with their schoolwork. One evening, as Ryan was working late in his home office, he received a text message from an unknown number. Curious, he opened it, his eyes widening as he read the words. Ryan, this is Eric. We need to talk. Meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street tomorrow at noon. Ryan's heart raced. What could Eric possibly want to discuss? He debated whether to respond, but his curiosity got the better of him. He texted back a brief confirmation and tried to focus on his work, though his mind kept drifting to the upcoming meeting. The next day, Ryan arrived at the coffee shop a few minutes early. He ordered a coffee and found a quiet corner to wait. His mind was a whirlwind of questions and speculation. A few minutes later, Eric walked in, looking around until he spotted Ryan. He approached the table and sat down, his expression serious. Thanks for meeting me, Eric said, his tone guarded. What is this about, Eric? Ryan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Eric took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize for what happened with Laura. I didn't know she was married at first, and by the time I found out, things had already gone too far. I never meant to cause this kind of trouble. Ryan's jaw clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. It's a bit late for apologies, don't you think? Eric nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I know, but there's something else you need to know. Laura's been talking to another guy, too. I overheard her mentioning his name a few times, Kevin. I thought you should know. Ryan's heart sank. Another betrayal? He felt a surge of anger and despair. Why are you telling me this? Because I feel guilty, Eric admitted. I never wanted to be part of this mess, and I thought you deserved to know the truth. Ryan stared at his coffee, his mind racing. Thanks for telling me, he said finally, though the words felt hollow. Eric stood up, giving Ryan a nod. Good luck, Ryan. I hope things work out for you. As Eric left, Ryan sat there, grappling with the new information. The revelation about Kevin was like another blow to his already battered heart. He knew he had to confront Laura, but he also felt a deep sense of exhaustion. When he returned home, Laura was in the living room reading. Ryan took a deep breath and approached her. "We need to talk." She looked up, her expression wary. "What is it?" "Who is Kevin?" Ryan asked bluntly. Laura's eyes widened in surprise, and then she sighed. "He's just a friend, Ryan." "Just a friend?" Ryan repeated, his voice tinged with bitterness. "That is what you said about Eric, too." Laura looked away. Guilt and frustration etched on her face. "It's not what you think. Then explain it to me," Ryan demanded, his anger bubbling to the surface. Laura hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Kevin is someone I met at work. We've been talking, but it's nothing serious. I needed someone to confide in, someone who wasn't involved in all this." Ryan felt a mixture of relief and suspicion. "If it's nothing serious, then why didn't you tell me about him?" "Because I knew how it would look," Laura admitted. "After everything that has happened, I didn't want to make things worse." Ryan stared at her, feeling a mix of emotions. "Laura, if we are going to have any chance of fixing this, we need to be completely honest with each other. No more secrets." She nodded, her eyes filled with regret. "You are right. I'm sorry, Ryan. I should have told you." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. Ryan knew they had a long way to go, but he also knew that honesty was the only way forward. As the days turned into weeks, Ryan and Laura continued to navigate their new reality. They attended counseling sessions, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. It was a slow and painful process, but Ryan was determined to give it his best effort. One evening, as they were sitting on the back porch, Laura turned to Ryan, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think we can ever really fix this?" Ryan looked out at the darkening sky, then back at Laura. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I am willing to try, for us and for the kids." Laura reached out and took his hand, her grip firm and steady. "Me too." As they sat together, hand in hand, Ryan felt a glimmer of hope. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. And for now, that was enough. Chapter 6. Legal Battles. Ryan sat in the waiting room of his lawyer's office, his mind racing with thoughts of the upcoming meeting. The events of the past few weeks had left him emotionally drained, but he knew he had to keep pushing forward. The future of his children and his own well-being depended on it. "Mr. Walker?" "Mr. Johnson, we'll see you now," the receptionist called, breaking through his reverie. Ryan stood and followed her to the lawyer's office. David Johnson was a seasoned attorney, known for his expertise in family law. Ryan had heard good things about him and hoped he would be the ally he needed in the challenging times ahead. "Ryan, good to see you," David greeted him, shaking his hand firmly. "Please, have a seat." "Thanks, David," Ryan replied, taking a seat across from the lawyer's desk. "I appreciate you seeing me on such short notice." "Of course. Let's get right to it," David said, pulling out a notepad. "I understand you and your wife are separating, and there is a possibility of divorce." Ryan nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yes. Laura and I have been having serious issues, and we are currently separated. I need to understand my options and prepare for what might come next." David nodded, his expression serious. "I understand. Let us start with the basics. Do you have any prenuptial agreements or specific financial arrangements we need to be aware of?" "No prenup," Ryan replied. "We've been married for 17 years, and we have 2 kids, Sophie, who is 16, and Jake, who is 14. David made a few notes. "All right. And what are your primary concerns? Custody, finances, property?" "All of the above," Ryan admitted, "but mostly custody. I want to make sure I have a significant role in my kids' lives. Laura S. already threatened to fight me on this." David nodded thoughtfully. "Custody battles can be challenging, but there are ways to navigate them. Courts typically look at the best interests of the children, including their relationship with each parent, stability, and overall well-being. We need to gather evidence that supports your involvement and the positive impact you have on Sophie and Jake." Ryan felt a glimmer of hope. "I've always been very involved in their lives, helping with schoolwork, spending quality time with them, being there for their activities. I want to make sure they know they can rely on me." "That's good to hear," David said, jotting down more notes. We all compile that information and present it to the court. Now let us discuss the financial aspects. How are your assets and accounts currently divided? Ryan explained the steps he had already taken to secure his finances, including transferring half of their joint accounts into his own name and canceling the joint credit cards. David listened carefully, nodding in approval. "Smart moves," David commented. "We all need to document all financial transactions and assets. This includes your home, any investments, retirement accounts, and personal property. Transparency is key in these situations." Ryan felt a sense of relief knowing that he had taken the right steps. "What about the house? Laura wants to keep it, but I need to make sure I have a place to stay where I can see the kids regularly." David leaned back in his chair, considering. It's common for the primary caregiver to keep the marital home, especially if it provides stability for the children. However, we can negotiate terms that ensure you have adequate visitation rights and perhaps even shared residency arrangements. Ryan nodded, feeling slightly reassured. "I just want to make sure the kids have a stable environment no matter what happens between Laura and me." "We'll work on that," David promised, "and we'll make sure your rights and interests are protected throughout this process." They spent the next hour going over more details, discussing potential strategies and preparing for the upcoming legal battles. By the time the meeting ended, Ryan felt a mixture of apprehension and determination. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to fight for his children and his own future. As he left the lawyer's office, Ryan's phone buzzed with a text message from Sophie. "Can we talk when you get home? It's important." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He quickly replied, "Of course, sweetheart. I'll be home soon." When he arrived home, Sophie was waiting for him in the living room, her face pale and worried. "What's going on, Soph?" he asked gently, sitting down beside her. "I overheard Mom talking on the phone," Sophie began, her voice trembling. "She was talking to her lawyer. She is planning to fight for full custody of Jake and me. She said she doesn't want us to have to live between two homes and that it is better for us to stay with her." Ryan's heart sank. "I'm sorry you had to hear that, Sophie, but I promise you I'm going to fight for you and Jake. I'm not going to let her take you away from me." Tears welled up in Sophie's eyes. "I don't want to choose between you and Mom. I just want things to go back to the way they were." Ryan pulled her into a hug, feeling the weight of her words. "I know, sweetheart, I know. We'll get through this together, okay? No matter what happens, I'll always be here for you and Jake." Sophie nodded, holding on to him tightly. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, Sophie," Ryan whispered, his heart breaking for his daughter. More than anything, the days that followed were filled with legal meetings, paperwork, and tense conversations with Laura. She was determined to fight for full custody, and Ryan knew he had to be prepared for a fierce battle. One afternoon, as Ryan was reviewing documents in his home office, his phone rang. It was David. "Ryan, I've got some news," David said, his tone serious. "Laura's lawyer just filed a motion for temporary full custody. They are arguing that it is in the best interest of the kids to stay in the marital home with her." Ryan felt a surge of anger and fear. "What can we do, David?" "We'll file a counter motion," David replied. "We'll argue for joint custody and present evidence that you've been a consistent and positive presence in your children's lives. We'll also highlight any concerns we have about Laura's actions and their impact on the kids." Ryan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "Okay. What do you need from me? Gather any documentation that supports your involvement as a father, photos, school records, statements from friends and family, anything that shows your active role in Sophie and Jake's lives," David instructed. "We'll also need to prepare you for the possibility of a court hearing." Ryan nodded, determined. "I'll get everything together. Let's make sure we're ready." The next few days were a blur of activity. Ryan combed through old photo albums, gathered school records, and reached out to friends and family for statements. He wanted to ensure he had a strong case to present to the court. Meanwhile, the tension between him and Laura continued to escalate. Their interactions were brief and fraught with underlying hostility. The kids could sense the strain, and it broke Ryan's heart to see the toll it was taking on them. One evening, after a particularly heated argument with Laura, Ryan found himself alone in the backyard, staring up at the stars. He felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. He knew he had to stay strong for his children, but the constant battle was wearing him down. As he stood there, the back door creaked open, and Jake stepped outside. "Dad?" Ryan turned to his son, forcing a smile. "Hey, Jake, what is up?" Jake hesitated, then walked over to stand beside him. "I am scared, Dad. I don't want you and Mom to fight. I just want things to be normal again." Ryan knelt down to Jake's level, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I know, buddy. I am scared too. But I promise you I am doing everything I can to make sure you and Sophie are okay. We'll get through this together." Jake looked up at him, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "Do you think things will ever go back to normal?" Ryan wished he could give his son the reassurance he needed, but he knew he had to be honest. "I don't know, Jake. But no matter what happens, I'm always going to be here for you." "That's a promise." Jake nodded, and Ryan pulled him into a hug, holding on to him tightly. As they stood there in the cool night air, Ryan felt a renewed sense of resolve. He would fight with everything he had to protect his children and ensure they felt loved and supported no matter what the future held. The following week, Ryan and Laura found themselves in a courtroom, facing a judge who would decide the temporary custody arrangement. Ryan's heart pounded as he listened to Laura's lawyer present their case, arguing that the children needed stability and that staying in the marital home with Laura was in their best interest. When it was David's turn, he presented the evidence Ryan had gathered, highlighting Ryan's active involvement in Sophie and Jake's lives and the importance of maintaining strong relationships with both parents. He also pointed out the potential emotional harm of separating the children from their father. As the judge listened, Ryan couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and hope. This decision would have a significant impact on their lives, and he desperately wanted to ensure he remained a central part of his children's world. After what felt like an eternity, the judge finally spoke. Ivy reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. It is clear that both parents have a strong bond with the children and that maintaining those relationships is crucial. Therefore, I am granting joint temporary custody, with both parents sharing equal time with Sophie and Jake. Relief washed over Ryan, and he glanced at Laura, who looked frustrated but resigned. They both knew this was only the beginning of a long legal battle, but for now, Ryan felt a sense of victory. He had secured his place in his children's lives, and that was a crucial first step. As they left the courtroom, Ryan felt a renewed determination. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them head-on. He had his children's best interests at heart, and he would fight tirelessly to ensure they felt loved and supported throughout this difficult journey. Chapter 7. Amanda's Schemes. The days following the court's decision felt like a fragile truce. Ryan and Laura navigated their new reality of joint custody with careful precision, each trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy for Sophie and Jake. Despite the judge's ruling, the underlying tension between them remained, threatening to erupt at any moment. One evening, as Ryan was helping Jake with his history homework, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Sophie. "Dad, can you come to my room? I need to talk." Ryan glanced at Jake, who was engrossed in his assignment. "Hey, buddy, I'll be right back. Sophie needs me." Jake nodded without looking up. "Okay, Dad." Ryan made his way to Sophie's room, knocking gently before entering. Sophie was sitting on her bed, her laptop open in front of her. She looked up, her expression troubled. "What's up, Soph?" Ryan asked, sitting down beside her. Sophie bit her lip, hesitating. "I found something online. About Mom." Ryan's heart sank. "What did you find?" Sophie turned the laptop towards him, showing a series of social media posts and comments. They were from a local community group, and they painted a picture of Laura that Ryan hadn't seen before. There were mentions of Laura meeting another man, Kevin, at various places around town, and rumors of more indiscretions. Ryan read through the posts, his anger and frustration growing. "Where did you find this?" "Someone from school sent it to me," Sophie explained, her voice trembling. "They said everyone's talking about it." Ryan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I'm sorry you had to see this, Sophie. Your mom and I are trying to work through a lot right now. This doesn't make it any easier. I just don't understand why she's doing this," Sophie said, tears welling up in her eyes. Why is she hurting us like this? Ryan reached out and hugged her tightly. I don't know, Soph, but I promise you, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you and Jake are okay. We'll get through this together. As the days passed, the rumors about Laura continued to spread, creating more tension in the household. Ryan knew he had to confront Laura about the situation, but he also wanted to protect Sophie and Jake from any further emotional turmoil. One afternoon, as Laura was preparing dinner, Ryan approached her in the kitchen. We need to talk. Laura looked up, her expression guarded. What is it now, Ryan? Ryan held up his phone, showing her the social media posts. What is going on with you and Kevin? Laura's face paled, and she set down the knife she was using. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Laura, Ryan said, his voice firm. This is all over the internet. Sophie found it. Do you have any idea how much this is hurting her? Laura's eyes filled with tears and she looked away. I didn't want this to happen. Kevin and I had complicated. Complicated? Ryan echoed, his anger rising. You're still seeing him, aren't you? Laura nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, but it's not what you think. We're just friends. Friends? Ryan said bitterly. This is exactly what you said about Eric. You're not fooling anyone, Laura, especially not our kids. Laura sank into a chair, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I'm sorry, Ryan. I've messed everything up. I don't know how to fix it. Ryan's anger ebbed, replaced by a weary resignation. You need to be honest, Laura. With me, with yourself, and most importantly, with Sophie and Jake. They deserve the truth. Laura nodded, wiping her eyes. I'll talk to them. I'll explain everything. Ryan left the kitchen, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. He knew Laura's actions had caused irreparable damage, but he also knew he had to keep moving forward for the sake of his children. The following day, Laura sat down with Sophie and Jake, trying to explain her actions and apologize. The conversation was difficult and emotional, but Ryan was relieved to see Laura taking responsibility, even if it was long overdue. As the weeks went by, Ryan and Laura continued to navigate the complexities of their separation. They attended counseling sessions, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. It was a slow and painful process, but Ryan remained determined to make it work for the sake of their children. One evening, as Ryan was working in his home office, his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Hello? Ryan, it's Claire Mitchell. I am one of the organizers of the local car show. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He had always loved participating in car shows, but he hadn't attended one since the separation. Hi, Claire, what can I do for you? We're having a special event next weekend, and we'd love for you to bring one of your cars, Claire said, her tone friendly. We've missed seeing you around. Ryan smiled, feeling a spark of excitement. I'd love to. I'll bring my old Chevy. Great! We'll see you there, Claire replied. Looking forward to it. The car show provided a much-needed distraction from the ongoing drama at home. Ryan spent the week preparing his Chevy, making sure it was in top condition for the event. Sophie and Jake helped him in the garage, enjoying the chance to bond over their shared love of cars. On the day of the show, Ryan felt a sense of exhilaration as he drove his Chevy to the event. The sight of the polished cars, the smell of gasoline, and the sound of engines revving filled him with a familiar joy. As he parked and set up his display, he noticed a woman and her teenage daughter setting up a spot next to him. The woman looked to be around his age, with a friendly smile and a confident demeanor. Her daughter, a few years younger than Sophie, was animatedly talking about the cars. Hi there, the woman said, extending her hand. I am Claire, and this is my daughter Ella. Ryan shook her hand, smiling. Nice to meet you, Claire. I am Ryan, and these are my kids, Sophie and Jake. Sophie and Jake greeted Claire and Ella, and soon the four of them were chatting like old friends. Ryan felt a sense of ease he hadn't experienced in a long time. Claire's warmth and enthusiasm were infectious, and he found himself genuinely enjoying the day. As the event went on, Ryan and Claire discovered they had a lot in common. Both were passionate about cars, and both were navigating the challenges of raising teenagers. They exchanged stories and laughs, finding comfort in their shared experiences. By the end of the day, Ryan felt a renewed sense of hope. He had made a new friend, someone who understood the complexities of his situation and who brought a sense of positivity to his life. As he packed up his Chevy, he exchanged phone numbers with Claire, promising to stay in touch. That evening, as Ryan sat on the back porch, he reflected on the day's events. Meeting Claire had been a bright spot in an otherwise challenging time, and he felt a sense of gratitude for the connection they had made. As he watched the stars twinkle in the night sky, Ryan knew there would be more obstacles ahead. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of optimism. He was ready to face whatever came next, knowing he had the support of his children and the potential for new friendships. The journey was far from over, but Ryan was determined to keep moving forward, one step at a time. And with each step, he felt a little bit stronger, a little bit more hopeful, and a little bit more at peace with the path he was on. Chapter 8. Moving on. Ryan's days began to take on a new rhythm. Despite the ongoing tension with Laura, he found solace in his work and in spending time with Sophie and Jake. The car show had been a turning point, rekindling his passion for cars and introducing him to Claire and Ella, who quickly became regular fixtures in his life. One evening, Ryan received a text from Claire. "Hey, want to grab coffee tomorrow? I have a new project I'd love to get your opinion on." Ryan smiled and replied, "Sure, sounds great. How about 10 a.m. at the coffee shop on Main Street? Perfect. See you then," Claire responded. The next morning, Ryan arrived at the coffee shop a few minutes early, eager to see Claire. He spotted her at a corner table, already sipping a latte and looking over some papers. She looked up and smiled as he approached. "Hey, Ryan. Thanks for meeting me," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "Of course," Ryan replied, taking a seat. "So, what is this project you wanted to discuss?" Claire pulled out a set of blueprints and spread them across the table. "I am restoring a 1969 Mustang Fastback. It's a beauty, but it needs a lot of work. I could really use your expertise." Ryan's eyes lit up as he examined the blueprints. "This is impressive, Claire. You've got a real gem here." "Thanks," Claire said, her enthusiasm evident. "I thought it would be a great father-daughter project for Ella and me, but we could definitely use some guidance." "I'd be happy to help," Ryan offered. "In fact, why don't you bring it over to my place this weekend? Sophie and Jake can join in too. It'll be a fun group project." Claire's face brightened. "That sounds wonderful. Ella will be thrilled." They spent the next hour discussing the Mustang restoration, sharing ideas and plans. Ryan found himself enjoying Claire's company more and more. She was passionate, intelligent, and had a great sense of humor. Their conversations flowed easily, and he felt a connection he hadn't experienced in a long time. As they finished their coffee, Claire glanced at her watch. "I should get going. Ella has a soccer game this afternoon, and I promised I'd be there." Ryan smiled. "I'll see you this weekend then. Looking forward to it." "Me too," Claire said, standing up. "Thanks again, Ryan. I really appreciate your help." "Anytime, Claire," Ryan replied, watching her leave with a sense of anticipation for the weekend. When Saturday arrived, Claire and Ella pulled up to Ryan's house with the Mustang on a trailer. Ryan, Sophie, and Jake were already in the garage, eagerly awaiting their arrival. "Wow, this is awesome!" Jake exclaimed as they unloaded the car. Sophie nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it is going to be so cool working on this together." Ryan and Claire supervised as the kids began examining the Mustang, pointing out areas that needed attention. It didn't take long for them to dive into the project, their excitement palpable. As the hours passed, the garage buzzed with activity and laughter. Ryan and Claire worked alongside the kids, teaching them about engines, bodywork, and restoration techniques. It was a perfect blend of education and fun, and Ryan couldn't help but feel a sense of fulfillment. At one point, Claire stepped back, wiping her hands on a rag and watching the kids with a smile. "This is exactly what I hoped for. They are having a blast." Ryan nodded, glancing at her. It's great to see them so engaged, and it's nice to have something positive to focus on. Claire looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "How are things going with Laura?" Ryan sighed, leaning against the workbench. "It's still tough. We're trying to work through things for the kids' sake, but it is a slow process. Claire nodded, her eyes compassionate. I am sorry, Ryan. I know it is hard. But you are doing an amazing job with Sophie and Jake. They are lucky to have you. Ryan felt a warmth in his chest at her words. Thanks, Claire. That means a lot. As the day drew to a close, they decided to wrap up the work for the day. Claire and Ella headed home, promising to return the following weekend to continue the project. Ryan watched them drive away, feeling a sense of contentment he hadn't felt in a long time. Over the next few weeks, the Mustang restoration became a regular weekend activity. It provided a welcome distraction from the ongoing challenges with Laura and gave Ryan something to look forward to. He enjoyed spending time with Claire and Ella, and the bond between their families grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, after a particularly productive day in the garage, Claire and Ella stayed for dinner. They gathered around the table, sharing stories and laughter. Ryan couldn't help but notice how natural it felt, like they were becoming an extended family. As they finished dessert, Claire glanced at Ryan, her eyes twinkling. I've got a surprise for everyone. Oh, really? Ryan said, intrigued. What is it? Claire reached into her bag and pulled out a set of tickets. I got us tickets to the annual classic car show downtown next month. I thought it would be a fun outing for all of us. Sophie and Jake's eyes lit up with excitement. That is awesome! Sophie exclaimed. Thanks, Claire. Yeah, thanks, Jake added, his enthusiasm matching his sister's. Ryan smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude. Claire, that's wonderful. Thank you. It's my pleasure, Claire said, her smile warm. I thought it would be a great way to celebrate all the hard work we've put into the Mustang. As they cleared the table and said their goodbyes, Ryan felt a sense of anticipation for the future. Despite the challenges he faced with Laura, he knew he had found something special in Claire and Ella. Their presence had brought joy and positivity into his life, and he was grateful for the newfound sense of hope they had given him. As the weeks passed, Ryan continued to focus on the Mustang restoration and his growing friendship with Claire. They spent more time together, not just working on cars, but also enjoying outings and activities with their kids. The bond between their families deepened, and Ryan found himself looking forward to each new day with renewed optimism. One evening, after a particularly productive day in the garage, Claire and Ryan sat on the back porch, sipping iced tea and watching the sunset. The kids were inside, playing a board game and laughing together. This has been amazing, Claire said, her voice soft. I never expected to find such a wonderful friend in you, Ryan. Ryan looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. I feel the same way, Claire. You've brought so much positivity into my life. I'm really grateful for you and Ella. Claire smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. It's been a tough year for both of us, but I feel like things are finally starting to look up. Ryan nodded, reaching out to take her hand. They are, and I'm excited to see where this journey takes us. As they sat together, hand in hand, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ryan felt a sense of peace and contentment. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them with the support of his children and the newfound connection with Claire and Ella. Life had thrown him some unexpected curves, but Ryan was determined to keep moving forward, one step at a time. And with each step, he felt stronger, more hopeful, and more at peace with the path he was on. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Ryan was ready to embrace the journey, knowing he had the strength and support to overcome whatever obstacles came his way. And for the first time in a long while, he felt truly hopeful about the future. Chapter 9. The New Beginning. The morning of the classic car show dawned bright and clear, the perfect backdrop for a day Ryan had been eagerly anticipating. Sophie and Jake were up early, their excitement palpable as they helped Ryan load up the Mustang for the event. Claire and Ella arrived shortly after, their faces lit up with enthusiasm. Ready to show off our hard work? Claire asked, giving Ryan a playful nudge. Absolutely, Ryan replied, grinning. Let's make this a day to remember. The drive to the car show was filled with laughter and animated conversations about cars, favorite models, and their hopes for the event. When they arrived, The sight of gleaming classic cars lined up in rows brought a surge of joy to Ryan's heart. This was his element, and sharing it with people who had become so important to him made it even more special. They found their assigned spot and set up the Mustang, polishing the chrome and making sure everything was in perfect condition. As the day progressed, the kids wandered around, marveling at the various cars on display and chatting with other car enthusiasts. Ryan and Claire stood by the Mustang, answering questions from passers-by and enjoying the camaraderie of the car show community. They took turns exploring the event, admiring the other vehicles, and soaking in the vibrant atmosphere. Around midday, as Ryan was grabbing lunch from one of the food trucks, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Ryan Walker, is that you?" He turned to see an old friend from his college days, Mark Thompson. They had lost touch over the years, but the sight of Mark brought back a flood of memories. "Mark! It's been ages!" Ryan exclaimed, shaking his friend's hand. "Too long, my friend," Mark replied with a smile. "What brings you here?" Ryan gestured to the Mustang. "Restoring this beauty has been my latest project. How about you?" Mark grinned. "I'm here with my '67 Camaro. Thought I'd show it off and catch up with some old friends." They spent the next few minutes reminiscing about their college days, sharing stories and catching up on each other's lives. Ryan felt a sense of nostalgia, but also gratitude for the new connections he had made. "Hey, I'd love to introduce you to my family," Ryan said, leading Mark back to their spot. Claire and the kids were chatting with some fellow car enthusiasts when they returned. Ryan introduced Mark to everyone, and they all hit it off immediately. It felt good to reconnect with an old friend and see him blend seamlessly into his new circle. As the day wore on, Ryan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The car show had brought together the people he cared about, and he couldn't have asked for a better way to spend the day. That evening, after the show, they all gathered at Ryan's house for a celebratory barbecue. The backyard was filled with the delicious smell of grilling burgers and the sound of laughter. Ryan watched as Sophie and Jake played a game of frisbee with Ella, their joy infectious. Claire stood beside him, sipping a glass of lemonade. "Today was perfect," she said softly. "Thank you for inviting us." "Thank you for being here," Ryan replied, his heart full. "You and Ella have brought so much happiness into our lives." Claire smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I feel the same way. It's been a tough year, but days like today remind me that there is always hope for brighter days." Ryan nodded, feeling a deep connection with Claire. They had both faced their share of challenges, but together, they had found a way to move forward and create new memories. As the evening drew to a close, Claire and Ella helped clean up, and Ryan felt a sense of contentment he hadn't experienced in a long time. The bond between their families had grown stronger, and he looked forward to the future with a renewed sense of optimism. The following weeks were filled with more joint activities and family outings. They continued working on the Mustang, visited local parks, and even took a weekend trip to the beach. Each day brought new joys and deeper connections. One afternoon, as they were finishing up some work on the Mustang, Claire turned to Ryan with a thoughtful expression. "You know, I've been thinking about something." "Oh? What's that?" Ryan asked, curious. "Well," Claire began, "Ella and I have been talking, and we were wondering if you and the kids would like to join us for Thanksgiving this year. We've made it a tradition to cook a big dinner and spend the day together, and it would mean a lot to us if you could be there." Ryan felt a warmth spread through his chest. "We'd love that, Claire. Thanksgiving has always been about family, and you and Ella have become a big part of ours." Claire smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "I'm so glad to hear that. It's going to be a wonderful holiday." As Thanksgiving approached, Ryan and the kids helped Claire and Ella with the preparations. The kitchen buzzed with activity as they cooked, baked, and decorated. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and the delicious smells of turkey, stuffing, and pumpkin pie. On Thanksgiving Day, they all gathered around the table, giving thanks for the blessings in their lives. Ryan looked around at the smiling faces of Sophie, Jake, Claire, and Ella, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. Despite the challenges and heartbreaks of the past year, they had found a way to create a new beginning filled with hope and joy. As they dug into the feast, Ryan raised his glass for a toast. To family, both old and new. To the love and support that has carried us through, and to the bright future ahead. Happy Thanksgiving! Happy Thanksgiving! Everyone echoed, clinking their glasses together. The rest of the evening was filled with games, stories, and more laughter. Ryan couldn't have asked for a more perfect day. He felt truly blessed to have found such wonderful people to share his life with. As he stood on the porch later that night, looking up at the stars, Claire joined him. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke. "I've been thinking about something else too," she said, her voice gentle. "What's that?" Ryan asked, turning to face her. "Well, I know we've become really close and I care about you and the kids a lot," Claire began. "I just wanted to say that no matter what happens, I am here for you. We're in this together." Ryan felt his heart swell with emotion. He reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you, Claire. That means more to me than you know. And I am here for you too. We are a team." Claire smiled, leaning in to rest her head on his shoulder. "A pretty great team if you ask me." Ryan chuckled softly, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. "Yeah, we are." As they stood there, hand in hand, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, Ryan knew that the future was full of possibilities. He had faced many challenges, but he had also found new beginnings and new sources of joy. And with Claire by his side, he felt ready to embrace whatever came next. The road ahead might still have its ups and downs, but Ryan was confident that they would navigate it together, with love, support, and a shared sense of hope. And for the first time in a long while, he felt truly happy and at peace with the journey he was on. Chapter 10. A Daughter. S. Realization. The winter months settled in, bringing a crisp chill to the air and a sense of anticipation for the holidays. Ryan's life had taken on a comforting routine, filled with the joy of family, the camaraderie of friends, and the satisfaction of restoring the Mustang. Yet beneath the surface, he could sense a storm brewing. Sophie had been unusually quiet lately, and Ryan knew that she was struggling to come to terms with the upheavals in their lives. One evening, after dinner, Sophie approached Ryan with a hesitant look. "Dad, can we talk?" Ryan set down his book and nodded. "Of course, Soph. What is on your mind?" Sophie took a deep breath, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "It's about Mom. I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, and I need to understand why things went so wrong." Ryan felt a pang of sadness. "I know this has been really hard for you, Sophie. Your mom and we made a lot of mistakes. But what matters most is that we both love you and Jake very much." Sophie nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. "I know you do, Dad, but I feel like I've been blaming you for everything. Mom always made it seem like you were the one who broke up our family." Ryan's heart ached at her words. "I'm sorry you felt that way, Sophie. It is not your fault. Your mom and I both had our roles in what happened. I just want you to know that I am here for you no matter what." Sophie wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. "I've been talking to Aunt Sarah a lot lately. She helped me see that there are always two sides to every story. I think I need to talk to Mom and get her side of things too." Ryan nodded, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. "That's a good idea, Soph. It's important to understand both perspectives. Just remember, whatever you learn, it doesn't change how much I love you." Sophie hugged him tightly. "I love you too, Dad. Thank you for being so understanding." The next day, Sophie called Laura and arranged to meet her for coffee. Ryan watched her leave, hoping that the conversation would bring some clarity and healing for his daughter. He knew that facing the truth could be painful, but it was a necessary step towards moving forward. Sophie returned a few hours later, her face a mixture of emotions. Ryan waited patiently as she sat down beside him, clearly needing some time to process. "How did it go?" he asked gently. Sophie took a deep breath. "It was hard, Dad. Mom admitted to everything. She said she was unhappy and made some really bad choices. She apologized for blaming you and for putting Jake and me in the middle." Ryan reached out and took her hand. "I'm glad she was honest with you, Sophie. It's important to know the truth, even when it's painful. Sophie nodded, tears streaming down her face. It hurts, Dad, but I also feel like a weight has been lifted. I can start to understand why things happened the way they did. Ryan hugged her tightly. You are so strong, Sophie. I am proud of you for facing this head on. Just remember, we are all here for you. Me, Jake, Claire, Ella, we are all in this together. As the days passed, Sophie began to find a sense of peace. She spent more time with Ryan, Claire, and Ella, embracing the support and love they offered. The bond between them grew stronger, and the laughter and joy in their home returned. One afternoon, as they were working on the Mustang, Sophie turned to Ryan with a thoughtful expression. Dad, I've been thinking maybe we should enter the Mustang in the spring car show. It is almost finished, and it would be amazing to show everyone what we've accomplished. Ryan smiled, feeling a surge of pride. That is a fantastic idea, Sophie. Let us make it happen. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. They worked tirelessly on the Mustang, fine-tuning every detail and ensuring it was in perfect condition for the show. The project brought them even closer together, and the sense of accomplishment was palpable. As the spring car show approached, Ryan felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The event was not just about showcasing the Mustang, it was a symbol of their journey, their resilience, and their ability to rebuild their lives. On the day of the show, they arrived early to set up. The sun was shining, and the air was filled with the sounds of engines and the buzz of excited conversations. Ryan felt a sense of exhilaration as they polished the Mustang and prepared for the judges. Claire and Ella joined them, their support and enthusiasm a constant source of encouragement. As they walked around, admiring the other cars and chatting with fellow enthusiasts, Ryan felt a deep sense of belonging. When the judging began, they stood by the Mustang, waiting anxiously for the results. The hours seemed to stretch endlessly, but finally the judges approached, their expressions impressed and appreciative. Congratulations, one of the judges said, smiling. Your Mustang is truly exceptional. You've done an amazing job. The announcement brought cheers and applause from the crowd, and Ryan felt a surge of pride and joy. They had done it. The Mustang was a testament to their hard work, dedication, and the strength of their family. As they accepted their award, Ryan looked around at the smiling faces of Sophie, Jake, Claire, and Ella. He knew that the journey was far from over, but this moment was a celebration of everything they had achieved together. That evening, they gathered at Ryan S. house for a celebratory dinner. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and joy, the sense of triumph and camaraderie palpable. Ryan stood up, raising his glass for a toast. To family, to friendship, and to new beginnings. We've faced many challenges, but we've come through stronger and more united. Here's to many more adventures together. Cheers! Everyone echoed, clinking their glasses. As the night drew to a close, Ryan felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had faced heartache and adversity, but he had also found love, support, and new opportunities. The road ahead might still have its challenges, but he knew that with his family and friends by his side, he could face anything. Life had a way of throwing unexpected twists and turns, but Ryan was ready to embrace whatever came next. He was filled with hope and optimism, confident that the future held endless possibilities. As he stood on the porch, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, Claire joined him, her presence a comforting and steadying force. Today was perfect, she said softly, leaning into him. Ryan nodded, his heart full. It really was, and it's just the beginning. Claire smiled, her eyes reflecting the light of the stars. I am so glad we are on this journey together. Me too, Ryan replied, pulling her close. Me too. As they stood there, hand in hand, watching the stars, Ryan felt a sense of peace and contentment. The future was bright, and he was ready to face it with the people he loved. The journey was far from over, but Ryan was confident that together, they could overcome any obstacle and embrace the endless possibilities that lay ahead. And for the first time in a long while, he felt truly at peace with the path he was on. Chapter 11. Laura S. downfall spring had given way to summer, and Ryan S. life had settled into a new rhythm. The restoration of the Mustang and the deepening bond with Claire and Ella had brought a sense of stability and joy that he hadn't felt in a long time. Yet amidst this newfound happiness, Laura S.'s life seemed to be unraveling. Ryan heard bits and pieces through mutual friends and community gossip. Laura S.'s relationship with Kevin had ended abruptly, and her social circle had started to distance themselves. It was clear that her decisions had led to a series of personal and social consequences that she was struggling to manage. One evening, as Ryan was working in his garage, his phone buzzed with a call from Laura. He hesitated before answering, unsure of what to expect. "Hello, Laura," he said, his tone neutral. "Ryan, I need to talk to you." Laura S.'s voice was strained, almost desperate. "Can we meet?" Ryan sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. "All right. Where do you want to meet? How about the park?" "It's quiet there," Laura suggested. "Okay, I'll be there in half an hour," Ryan agreed, feeling a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. When he arrived at the park, Laura was already there, sitting on a bench near the pond. She looked different, tired, worn, and vulnerable in a way he hadn't seen before. He sat down beside her, waiting for her to speak. "Thank you for meeting me," Laura began, her voice shaky. "I know I don't deserve your time, but I didn't know who else to turn to." Ryan nodded, not saying anything, but signaling for her to continue. "Everything's falling apart," Laura admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "Kevin left. My friends have turned their backs on me, and I am struggling to keep things together at work." Ryan felt a pang of sympathy despite everything that had happened. "I'm sorry you're going through this, Laura, but you made choices that had consequences." "I know," Laura said, wiping her tears. "I've been a terrible person. I hurt you, the kids, and now I am paying the price for it." Ryan sighed, his feelings a mix of anger and pity. "What do you need from me, Laura?" "I need to make things right with Sophie and Jake," Laura said, her voice breaking. "I need to be a better mother to them, but I don't know where to start." Ryan looked at her, seeing a genuine plea for help. "You need to be honest with them, Laura. Own up to your mistakes and show them that you are committed to changing." Laura nodded, taking a deep breath. "I will. I promise." As they sat in silence, watching the sunset over the pond, Ryan felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, Laura could find a way to rebuild her life and her relationship with their children. The next day, Laura visited Ryan S.'s house to talk to Sophie and Jake. Ryan stayed in the background, giving them the space they needed for a difficult conversation. He watched as Laura apologized, tears streaming down her face, and Sophie and Jake listened, their expressions a mix of anger, hurt, and longing for their mother. "I am so sorry for everything," Laura said, her voice trembling. "I've made so many mistakes, but I want to be better for you. Please give me a chance to make it right." Sophie and Jake exchanged glances before Sophie spoke. "We want to believe you, Mom, but it's going to take time." "I understand," Laura said, her tears flowing freely. "I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, Laura made a concerted effort to rebuild her relationship with Sophie and Jake. She attended their school events, helped with homework, and spent quality time with them. Ryan watched from a distance, hoping that her efforts were sincere and that she could truly change. Meanwhile, Ryan's bond with Claire continued to grow. They spent more time together, their relationship deepening in ways that felt natural and right. Claire's presence was a constant source of support and joy, and Ryan couldn't imagine his life without her. One evening, as they sat on the porch, Claire turned to Ryan with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "Oh? What's that?" Ryan asked, curious. "Well, Ella and I have been talking, and we were wondering if you and the kids would like to move in with us," Claire said, her eyes shining with hope. "We have plenty of space, and it would be wonderful to be together all the time." Ryan felt a surge of emotion. The idea of blending their families and creating a new home together was something he had hoped for. But he wanted to make sure it was the right decision for everyone. "That sounds amazing, Claire," Ryan said, smiling. "But let us talk to Sophie and Jake about it first. I want to make sure they are comfortable with the idea." Claire nodded, her smile widening. "Of course, I just wanted to put it out there." The next day, Ryan sat down with Sophie and Jake to discuss Claire's suggestion. He explained the idea of moving in with Claire and Ella and asked for their thoughts and feelings. Sophie and Jake listened carefully, their expressions thoughtful. After a few moments, Sophie spoke up. "I think it's a great idea, Dad. We love Claire and Ella, and it would be nice to be together." Jake nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it feels like we are already a family. This would just make it official." Ryan felt a wave of relief and happiness. "I'm glad you feel that way. We'll talk to Claire and Ella and start making plans." As they began the process of moving in together, Ryan felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. They combined their homes, blending their belongings and creating a new space that felt like home for all of them. Laura, seeing the positive changes in Ryan's life and the happiness he had found with Claire, made an effort to support the transition. She continued to work on her relationship with Sophie and Jake, showing them that she was committed to being a better mother. One weekend, as they were unpacking boxes and arranging furniture, Claire turned to Ryan with a smile. "This feels right, doesn't it?" "It does," Ryan agreed, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so grateful for you and Ella. You've brought so much happiness into our lives." Claire kissed him softly. "And you've done the same for us. I can't wait to see what the future holds." As they settled into their new life together, Ryan felt a deep sense of contentment. They faced challenges and joys as a blended family, but the love and support they shared made everything worthwhile. The summer months flew by, filled with family outings, barbecues, and evenings spent under the stars. Ryan and Claire's relationship continued to grow, and their bond with their children strengthened with each passing day. One evening, as they sat around a bonfire in the backyard, Sophie turned to Ryan with a thoughtful expression. "Dad, do you ever think about the future? Like, what's next for us?" Ryan smiled, feeling a sense of hope and optimism. "I do, Soph, and I think the future is bright. We've come a long way, and I believe that as long as we stick together, we can face anything." Claire nodded in agreement, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "We've built something special here. A family that's strong and resilient. I am excited for all the adventures ahead." As they sat together, surrounded by the warmth of the fire and the love of their family, Ryan knew that they were on the right path. The journey had been difficult, but they had found their way through, emerging stronger and more united. The road ahead was filled with endless possibilities, and Ryan was ready to embrace whatever came next. With Claire, Sophie, Jake, and Ella by his side, he felt confident that they could face any challenge and create a future filled with love, joy, and endless adventures. Chapter 12. The Final Showdown. As summer turned to fall, the crisp air brought a sense of renewal and change. Ryan's life with Claire, Sophie, Jake, and Ella had settled into a harmonious rhythm. Yet, there was still one unresolved issue that lingered like a dark cloud: Laura's ongoing attempts to manipulate the situation and regain control over her life and the lives of her children. Ryan had hoped that Laura's genuine efforts to rebuild her relationship with Sophie and Jake would continue, but it became clear that old habits die hard. Laura had begun to stir up trouble again, using subtle manipulations and playing the victim card in their community. It wasn't long before Ryan received an unexpected call from his lawyer, David. "Ryan, we need to talk," David said, his tone serious. "Laura has filed for sole custody again, claiming that you are creating an unstable environment for the kids." Ryan felt a surge of anger and frustration. "What? That's absurd, David. She knows how well the kids are doing. This is just another one of her games." David sighed. "I know, Ryan, but we need to take this seriously. I'll prepare our defense, but we need to gather evidence to show that you provide a stable and loving home for Sophie and Jake." Ryan hung up, feeling a mix of determination and worry. He knew he had to protect his children and fight back against Laura's manipulative tactics. He called Claire and explained the situation, seeking her support and guidance. "We'll get through this, Ryan," Claire said firmly. "We know the truth, and we'll make sure everyone else does too. We'll gather all the evidence we need to prove that you are a wonderful father and that this is just another one of Laura's schemes." Ryan felt a surge of gratitude for Claire's unwavering support. "Thank you, Claire. I don't know what I'd do without you." Over the next few weeks, Ryan and Claire worked tirelessly to prepare for the upcoming court battle. They gathered testimonials from friends, teachers, and community members who could attest to Ryan's dedication and the positive environment he provided for his children. They also documented the countless activities and family moments that demonstrated the strong bond between Ryan, Sophie, and Jake. The day of the court hearing arrived, and Ryan felt a mix of nerves and determination. He knew this was his chance to stand up to Laura's manipulations and protect his children's well-being. As they entered the courtroom, Ryan was greeted by David's reassuring presence and Claire's supportive smile. The proceedings began, with Laura's lawyer presenting her case. They painted a picture of Ryan as an unstable and irresponsible parent, using twisted versions of events and selective evidence to support their claims. Ryan felt his anger rising, but forced himself to stay calm, knowing that his truth would prevail. When it was their turn, David presented a compelling defense, highlighting Ryan's active involvement in his children's lives, the stability he provided, and the positive impact of his relationship with Claire and Ella. They showed photos, videos, and testimonials that painted a clear picture of a loving and supportive family environment. Finally, it was Ryan's turn to speak. He stood up, taking a deep breath, and looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor," Ryan began, his voice steady, "I love my children more than anything in this world. I have done everything in my power to provide them with a stable and loving home, and I will continue to do so. This case is not about me or Laura, it's about what's best for Sophie and Jake. They deserve to grow up in an environment where they feel safe, loved, and supported. That's what I've worked hard to provide, and that's what I will continue to fight for." The judge listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. After what felt like an eternity, the judge finally spoke. "I have reviewed the evidence and heard the testimonies from both sides," the judge began. "It is clear to me that Mr. Walker has created a stable and nurturing environment for his children. The attempts to portray him as unstable are unfounded. Therefore, I am granting joint custody, with both parents having equal time with the children. I urge both parties to focus on the best interests of Sophie and Jake moving forward." Ryan felt a wave of relief and triumph wash over him. He had won. He had protected his children from Laura's manipulative tactics and ensured that they would continue to thrive in a loving environment. As they left the courtroom, Claire hugged him tightly. "You did it, Ryan. I am so proud of you." Ryan smiled, feeling a sense of peace and closure. "We did it, Claire. Thank you for standing by me." That evening, they celebrated their victory with a family dinner, surrounded by love and laughter. Ryan looked around the table at the smiling faces of Sophie, Jake, Claire, and Ella, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and contentment. In the weeks that followed, life returned to its new normal. Laura, seeing the futility of her manipulative efforts, began to focus on genuinely improving her relationship with Sophie and Jake. She attended counseling and made a sincere effort to change, showing her children that she was committed to being a better mother. Ryan continued to cherish the time he spent with his children and with Claire. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, and the future looked brighter than ever. They faced challenges together, supported each other through ups and downs, and created a home filled with love and joy. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Ryan turned to Claire with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about something." "Oh? What's that?" Claire asked, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. "I've been thinking about the future," Ryan said, taking her hand, "about how much you and Ella mean to me and the kids. I can't imagine my life without you." Claire smiled, her eyes filling with emotion. "I feel the same way, Ryan. You and the kids have become such an important part of our lives." Ryan took a deep breath, feeling a surge of love and determination. "Claire, will you marry me? Will you and Ella become an official part of our family?" Claire's eyes widened with surprise and joy. "Yes, Ryan, yes, I will." As they embraced, surrounded by the beauty of the night and the love of their family, Ryan felt a deep sense of peace and happiness. The journey had been long and challenging, but they had come through stronger and more united. The road ahead was filled with endless possibilities, and Ryan was ready to embrace whatever came next. With Claire, Sophie, Jake, and Ella by his side, He knew they could face any challenge and create a future filled with love, joy, and endless adventures. Chapter 13. A New Family. The news of Ryan and Claire's engagement spread quickly among their family and friends, bringing a wave of congratulations and excitement. The kids were thrilled, and the prospect of blending their families into one brought a sense of joy and anticipation. As the wedding plans began to take shape, Sophie and Ella took an active role in helping with the preparations. They spent hours discussing decorations, choosing flowers, and planning the menu. Jake, ever the practical one, focused on ensuring everything ran smoothly, from the logistics of the venue to the timing of the ceremony. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room, Claire brought out a stack of old photo albums. "I thought it would be fun to look through some memories and maybe find a few pictures to include in the wedding slideshow," she suggested. Ryan nodded, smiling. "That sounds great. Let's see what we can find." They spent the next few hours flipping through the albums, sharing stories and laughter as they reminisced about the past. Sophie and Jake marveled at the pictures of their parents when they were younger, while Ella delighted in hearing stories about Claire's childhood. As they turned the pages, Ryan felt a deep sense of connection to his past and an even stronger bond with his present. The memories were a testament to the journey he had been on, and he felt grateful for the love and support that had brought him to this point. The day of the wedding arrived, bathed in the warm glow of a late summer sun. The ceremony was held in a beautiful garden, surrounded by flowers and the gentle sound of a nearby stream. Friends and family gathered, filling the air with a sense of celebration and love. Ryan stood at the altar, waiting for Claire. He felt a mixture of excitement and calm, knowing that this moment marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. As the music began to play, Claire appeared, walking down the aisle with Ella by her side. She looked radiant, her smile reflecting the joy in her heart. Sophie and Jake stood proudly as part of the wedding party, their faces beaming with happiness. Ryan felt a surge of emotion as he watched his family come together, united in love and support. The ceremony was simple yet heartfelt, filled with meaningful vows and promises of a shared future. As Ryan and Claire exchanged rings, they felt the weight of their commitment, knowing that they were building a foundation of love and trust for their blended family. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, a cheer erupted from the guests. Ryan and Claire shared a tender kiss, sealing their vows and beginning their journey as a new family. The reception was a joyous celebration, filled with music, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Sophie and Jake gave a touching speech, expressing their happiness and gratitude for the love and support they had received. Ella joined them, adding her own words of appreciation and excitement for their future together. As the evening progressed, Ryan and Claire took a moment to step outside and watch the sunset. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, casting a warm glow over the garden. "This is perfect," Claire said softly, leaning into Ryan. "I couldn't have asked for a better day." Ryan smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "It really is. I am so grateful for you, Claire, for this family we've created." Claire looked up at him, her eyes shining with love. "And I am grateful for you, Ryan, for everything we have been through and everything we have to look forward to." They stood in silence for a moment, taking in the beauty of the moment and the promise of their future. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, they knew that their journey together was just beginning. In the months that followed, Ryan and Claire settled into their new life as a blended family. They navigated the challenges and joys of parenting, supporting each other through the ups and downs. The bond between Sophie, Jake, and Ella grew stronger, and their home was filled with laughter, love, and a sense of belonging. One afternoon, as they gathered for a family game night, Ryan felt a deep sense of contentment. The room was filled with the sound of friendly competition and playful banter, a testament to the strength of their family bond. As they played, Ryan couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. The heartbreak, the challenges, and the moments of doubt had all led to this point a place of love, joy, and endless possibilities. Your move, Dad, Jake said, breaking through Ryan's thoughts. Ryan smiled, picking up his game piece. All right, here goes nothing. The game continued, filled with laughter and friendly teasing. As the night wore on, Ryan felt a deep sense of gratitude for the love and support that had carried them through. He knew that their future was bright, and he was ready to embrace whatever came next with his family by his side. As the game ended and they began to clean up, Sophie turned to Ryan with a thoughtful expression. Dad, what's the next adventure for our family? Ryan smiled, feeling a sense of excitement. I think the sky's the limit, Soph. We have so many possibilities ahead of us, and I can wait to see what the future holds. Claire nodded, her eyes reflecting the same sense of hope and anticipation. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, as a family. Ryan felt a surge of love for his family, knowing that they were united in their journey. The road ahead might have its challenges, but with Claire, Sophie, Jake, and Ella by his side, he knew they could face anything. As they finished cleaning up and prepared for bed, Ryan took a moment to stand on the porch and look up at the stars. The night was clear, the sky filled with twinkling lights that seemed to promise endless possibilities. Claire joined him, slipping her hand into his. What are you thinking about? She asked softly. Ryan smiled, his heart full. Just how lucky I am, how lucky we are. Claire nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. We really are, and this is just the beginning. Ryan kissed her gently, feeling a deep sense of peace and contentment. To new beginnings, Claire, to our family and to the future. To the future, Claire echoed, her smile reflecting the joy in her heart. As they stood together, watching the stars, Ryan knew that their journey was just beginning. With love, support, and the strength of their family, they were ready to embrace whatever came next. The road ahead was filled with endless possibilities, and Ryan was excited to see where it would lead. Thank you for listening to this story. Subscribe to my channel, put a like under the video, and write a comment about how you like this story and what stories you want to hear.